Hey sis, welcome to another episode of Start That Business. I'm continuing my Q&A series to answer a couple of questions from my listeners. The question I'm answering today is, when I started my business, I gave my customers unlimited access to contact me at any time as a way to attract more customers and make a great impression. Ooh, some customers are misusing the unlimited access by contacting me at odd hours. What boundaries should I set with existing customers? Oh, I can't wait to answer this question. This is such a juicy, juicy question. Stay tuned as I answer this question in today's episode. I have a review from Betsy Crony on Apple Podcasts. Betsy titled her review, "Thank you." She writes, "Such great value here for faith-based entrepreneurs. I highly recommend this podcast." Thank you so much, Betsy, for your encouraging review. If this podcast has inspired you, encouraged you, given you guidance, and you would like to say thank you to me, please leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. That's one of the ways you can say thank you. And when you do that, it helps this podcast reach more people. Scroll to the bottom of my podcast page where you're listening to this episode. You will see the ratings and review section. Locate and click the Write a Review purple link. Enter a title for your review. Click on the 5-star icon and type your written review for this podcast. Once you're done, click on the submit button and you are done. Thank you so much in advance for leaving me a review. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey sis, welcome to the Start That Business podcast, where you will find practical solutions that empower you to start your service-based business. I'm your host, Chichi Ukomadu, an entrepreneur, wife, mom of 3, and a Jesus follower. 10 years ago, I was afraid of giving up my desire to build a corporate career and say yes to the Holy Spirit's nudge to start that business. I believe personal fulfillment comes from letting go of your way and saying yes to God's way so you can become all you were created to be. If you're ready to find personal fulfillment, grab a cup of coffee, tea, or hot cocoa, and your favorite snack. It's time to take your first step to start that business. You know the one I'm talking about? Yes, that one you've been putting up for a long time. I don't know about you, but when I started my service business, there's this fear of not getting customers. And when you finally get them, you want to do everything you can to please them, even if it means going against your boundaries. That fear makes you just go things that you might not do on a good day. You go overboard in a bid to please this new customer so you don't lose them. You do certain things. I did it. I raised my hand. I did it 100%. When I started my business, I knew all my customers by name. I would give them my personal phone number. And because I played multiple roles at the beginning, I was the customer support person, I was the salesperson, I was the one doing different roles in my business. That fear made me to just relax my boundaries or not even honor my boundaries anyway. But what I've learned as my business has grown is that these boundaries are necessary to keep you going, to help you build a sustainable business. Like I said, when I started, I would give my customers my personal phone number, but the problem that created for me was when my business became bigger, it was not sustainable to answer customers on my personal line anymore. It became very disruptive to my family life. It became very disruptive to my personal time. So I can totally relate to this question. It's easy for new customers to flow with your boundaries because they are they're interfacing with you for the first time. But when you start your business, those initial customers you start with, if you don't set a boundary with them, it's more difficult to try to enforce that boundary later. But there's hope. There's hope. I was able to do it, and so can you. So how do you implement boundaries with existing customers? One of the things I did was to start with understanding. Understand that we are creatures of habit. And when you start your business, the initial customers that come to you, the way you tell them to behave is the way they will behave. So when they came to you, you told them that it was okay for them to call you on your personal line. So that's exactly what they're doing. But now they're misusing it and they're calling you at odd hours, sending you email at odd hours. So you told them they could do that. Now you have to understand that we're creatures of habit. And once something has been formed as a habit, now it will take work to break that habit. So start with understanding. Start from the place. It was okay for you to do that. Maybe you were afraid like I was. It's okay. But now that your business is growing, you have to come up with new boundaries and now train your existing customers in this new habit, which leads me to the second thing. The second thing you can do is to reintroduce your boundaries to your existing customers through a formal communication. I've seen a couple of businesses do it where after a while, they will send you an email saying, hey, this is our new rule of engagement. I know we started like this, but it's no longer serving us. In order for us to serve you better, these are the new rules of engagement. So reintroduce your boundaries to your existing customers through a formal communication. If you have an email list, your email list will probably be separated. You'll be able to tell existing customers from new customers so that you don't send the email to everybody. So reintroduce your boundaries to your existing customers in a formal communication. That's the second thing. The third thing you can do is after you have reintroduced these boundaries, you now have to do the work of retraining them by reinforcing your boundaries through redirection with zero excuses. I will give you an example. When I started my business, I used to give my customers my personal phone number. But when my business grew to the size it is right now, it was no longer sustainable. So I reintroduced my boundaries through a formal email. Then I started reinforcing my boundaries through redirection. So when they call me on my personal line, I will send them a message to say, hey, please, I no longer take calls on this line. Please send me an email instead or redirect them to the communication you want them to use instead and let them know the hours of communication or the times you'll be available. So I kept doing that. For every new call I receive, I'll redirect them. After a while, I stopped taking their calls. So when they call me on my personal line, instead of responding to them on my personal line, I will go to my email. I'll go to my business email, which was the way I wanted them to communicate with me. And I will respond to them through the email to let them know that my personal line is no longer a way of communicating for me. So that's the way you will reinforce your boundaries through redirection. So redirect them to the new habit you want them to form. Redirect them to your new boundaries with zero excuses. Don't make excuses for anyone because once you make for one customer, you have to make it for every other customer. So reinforce your boundaries through redirection. Then the fourth thing you can do is don't be afraid to fire customers who consistently refuse to respect your business boundaries. Now, I have had to fire some customers because I redirected them several times. They were not just willing, they were stuck in their ways. And I said, I can no longer engage with you if you keep insisting on doing business this way. This is not the way I want to do business. So don't be afraid to fire customers who consistently refuse to respect your business boundaries. Don't worry, the God who brought the customers to you in the first place will bring more. So don't be afraid to say, hey, I can no longer serve you because you are not respecting my boundaries. All right, let's recap. How do you implement boundaries with existing customers? Number 1, start with understanding. Number 2, reintroduce your boundaries to existing customers through formal communication. Number 3, reinforce your boundaries through redirection with 0 excuses. Number 4, don't be afraid to fire customers who consistently refuse to respect your business boundaries. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope my answer was helpful to you. I hope you learned something new and you were encouraged. If you have a specific business question like the one I just answered, please go to startthatbusinesspodcast.com and send me your question, and I'll be happy to answer it here on the podcast. Please share this episode with someone who is looking to start a service-based business or someone who has started a business so that they can get the help they need. Keep listening for more exciting episodes. I'll meet you here next week. Hey sis, before you go, if this podcast has encouraged you, helped you, inspired you, or taught you something new, please head over to Apple Podcasts and search for Start That Business Podcast and leave me a written review. That's one of the ways I know this podcast is impacting your life. Thank you so much. I'll also love to connect with you on Instagram. My handle is @ChichiUkomadu. Until next time, always remember you have all you need to start that business. I'll see you soon.